The story begins in 1940 when Army officers caught John and asked him to sign a paper that said he was a spy, and because it was a lie, John refused to sign it. Then they brought John's wife, who had been tortured so much by the soldiers that she was now confessing to being a spy. Many prisoners were then sent to a breeding camp. They were told that the entire area was their jail as it was surrounded by snow. Therefore, if someone tries to run away, he will not be able to survive. Rewards were also placed on the heads of fugitives. That's why the local people will also kill you. Then the heads of all the prisoners were shaved, and at night when it was time to eat, they got very little food. Because of the lack of vitamins, many men had reduced night vision. Then a man named Smith accidentally dropped a little food. A forced prisoner immediately pounced on him, but Smith immediately put his foot down and saved his food. John took pity on the man and gave him his food. To this, Smith told him that it would be heavy to be more kind here. Lives will be lost here. After Smith left, a prisoner named Roy told John he was an American. That's why he was arrested, put in jail. I have also been falsely implicated, John said, to which Roy laughed and said that I just acted in the wrong movie. That's my crime. Then inside, we see a prisoner named Waka who was gambling. Roy tells John about him that this is a dangerous rogue. The guards don't stop Waka from doing anything. That's why everyone is afraid. Some other prisoners were captured as slave laborers. Now John began to talk about what to do if the brother wanted to run away from here. But Roy said that it is impossible, brother. He warned that his brother would not survive. At the same time, Waka asked a prisoner for his sweater. When the man refused, Waka took out a knife and stabbed him. Then another prisoner took off his sweater and gave it to Waka, by giving which he repaid the money lost in gambling in a way. As the days passed, John gradually adapted to the camp's ways. Prisoners had to work in the snow extracting coal and cutting wood, but they were given very little food and their sleeping place was not hot at all. They didn't even get new clothes and shoes. One night, John found some lice in his clothes, and Roy started saying that I have an old home remedy for this. He told John to get out of there, but then he suddenly heard a loud noise. They soon realized that there was an explosion in the coal mine. John was thinking of running away when he saw the tower while Roy was pressing his clothes in the snow. I have a friend, Lazarus, who can get us out of here. After which he started talking about the plan and decided that if he kept going in the direction of the south, he would reach the country of Mongolia. But for such a long way, they will have to collect food and also wait for the cold to subside because they will die in this snow. Roy then started taking food in exchange for cigarettes, which he hid under the loose wooden floor. John checked the pressed clothes and saw that all the lice had gathered there. After some time, the soldiers tried to take the prisoners to work. But due to heavy snowfall, it became difficult for them to walk, and some people started falling. The soldiers allowed the prisoners to lie down for a while, saying that we don't care even if you die. When Smith complained, a gun was pointed at his head. But he ignored the guard and started walking towards the forest. Then the soldiers also took all the prisoners inside the forest. The prisoners quickly assembled the logs into a small shelter and asked Smith to join them. The next day, out of all the prisoners, Smith and John were selected for the coal work. There he suffered a persistent cough as it was very difficult to breathe. Sometimes cracks would start inside the cave from above. Because of the lack of air, John fell and felt as if he had reached his home. He started walking towards his house in his confusion when the guard was all set to shoot him. Fortunately, Smith pulled him back in time. Thanking her, John told her about his plan to escape. But Smith said Roy has been driving people crazy for years. He does the same with any new prisoner who comes. Still, John insisted on running away, and Smith agreed to accompany him. That night, John pulled Roy out of bed to show him that the storm was so strong that his footprints would be covered. That's why they should leave. But Roy insisted that it was not possible and started giving excuses for having less food. John wondered if this man wasn't driving me crazy. But at the same time, Waka saw both of them and went back inside. Meanwhile, Andres discovers that a prisoner named Kazakh is hiding his nighttime incurable disease. Swear an oath on this, he looked absolutely fine on the day. I'll hold your shoulder at night, brother. What happened? He requested Andres to hide his plan so that he too could be a part of the plan. During this time, Smith gave his watch to Lazarus so that he could find out how to escape in it. Then Lazarus explained that they would have to turn off the generator to escape, which would give them 10 minutes of darkness and make it much easier for them to escape. This work will have to be done when the shift of troops changes. While they were waiting for the right time, Waka suddenly pounced on John and put a knife to his neck, saying, "I owe a lot to the gamblers. That's why he wants to leave." There was a knife on John's neck. He couldn't refuse. My brother had to believe it. As soon as it was time to escape, the prisoners switched off the generator and ran away by cutting the wires. The alarm went off immediately, but due to the storm, the guards could not see anything and there were no footprints left. He entered the forest with his dogs with the hope that his nose would find the fugitives. 7 prisoners were running as fast as they could in the forest. In a short time, he was so tired that it was now difficult to move on. Then John gasped and reminded them that dogs run very fast. We must keep going. They again tried to move ahead, but the snow had started blinding their eyes. So he started looking for a place to hide. John refused to stop because he believed that the blind man would be stopping the guards just as he was stopping them. He then took Waka's knife and made a mask for himself by cutting the bark of trees so that he could protect his face from the snow. Now he could walk without any problem. After some time, when the storm stopped, they sat down in a place to rest, and they now gathered their entire foodstuff. John then noticed that Waka was wearing Roy's jacket. Then Waka told that Roy was almost going to cheat us. But I forced him to keep quiet and brought all the food he had stored. When they resumed their journey, Smith secretly told John that taking Waka along was like making a deal with the devil. After this, he suddenly heard screams from a distance, but they were only sheep. As the days passed, John began to use his training to choose the path by looking at the direction of the sun. I was very happy to see this. He told John that whatever happens, I will support you. These people will talk about me. Don't listen to them. Then the next time he sat down to rest, John realized that it would still take 3 or 4 weeks for them to reach the nearby lake. But they have only 1 week's food left. That is why they have to hunt or catch fish. Vaka wanted to plunder the village settled along with the fields, but everyone else refused. During this time, Kazakh went to look for wood, but then it became night, and that is why he stopped seeing. As a result, he got lost in the forest. He started wandering looking for a way to return, but due to the cold, he started having confusion. Just then, he saw his old teacher standing nearby and saw a city in the distance. He thought he had finally reached the people. But when the others set out to find him, they were shattered to see that Kaz had died just a few meters away from a camp. They buried him and prayed for his soul to rest in peace. Waka, however, had to say that a mouth for food was reduced. Well, their food will last for a long time, but despite this, after a few weeks, all the men became so desperate for food that they began to catch eggs from the ground with insects and nests. Their bodies were so tired that it was very difficult to move forward. That's why they took refuge in a cave where Tomas began to paint on the walls to stay conscious. One night, Vaka asked John which of them would be the first to die. From his words, it seemed that he was now ready to eat his own companions. Suddenly, they heard some sound and saw that some wolves were eating a dead animal. The men began to run and shout and shake the logs until the wolves ran away in fear. Then John saw that all his friends were so hungry that they began to eat the body of the creature like animals. Fed up with this, John decided to find the lake alone and told the others that if I did not return in a week, then without me continuing the journey, after going a long way and avoiding the rain, John again began to have confusion. But a few days later, he returned to the camp and said he had found the lake. After a little rest, John set out with everyone towards the lake, and after walking for 3 days, he also reached there. After getting a little fresh there, he started moving towards the border. While crossing the forest, they felt that someone was following them. Then they cleverly surrounded the man and Waka almost attacked him. But John stopped him. That mysterious person was a polished girl named Irina, who, like them, was running away and chasing them for food and safety. John wanted to take her with him, but the others refused because they did not have enough food, and if it is a girl, it will also slow down their speed. After some time, they found an animal stuck in the mud, which became their dinner. But Andres, seeing something behind, separated from the herd, and then in the evening he came back with Irina. The next morning, they made a soap by mixing a few things and finally washed their clothes. He also bowled well. However, Waka refused to take their help and started cutting his own beard. After some time, they came to know that a part of the lake had frozen. The ice seemed thin and weak. But Irina still managed to run over him and get to the other side. Everyone else followed suit. He even slipped and fell several times, but luckily all of them reached the other side. Now walking through the woods, Smith asks Irina about her past, and she reveals that her parents were killed by Russian soldiers. But Smith found some strange things in his emotional story. Somewhere he understood that this girl was lying because her accent showed that she was from German territory. For the moment, he let it go, but told Ariana, "Promise me you won't lie again." After some time, they saw a town far away and planned to sneak in there to get food, but there was a huge risk of being recognized. If by any means the word spreads to the jail that he has come this way, then the search will be started, and those people cannot take this risk. That is why it was decided that they will roam through the forest path. In the evening, they all saw that Waka was missing from there, and everyone started thinking whether he had cheated us or not. At that moment, the Waka came back, and Smith angrily snapped at him and started abusing him. Just then, Waka opened his bag and showed the dead animals and said that a dog had to be killed too. This is the only way we have left to live. He had also brought a stolen liquor bottle and said that today is my birthday. Let's celebrate. During dinner, Waka began to sing a folk song, and Irina began to sing along with him. That made Waka realize that she too had been on the streets like him. Now everyone knew that Irina had lied. That's why Irina finally told her story. Both of his parents were detectives. A few years ago, he was arrested, and his children were sent to an orphanage. When my brother died in that orphanage, I decided to run away from there. He continued his journey the next day. But on the way, there was a place where there were a lot of mosquitoes. As a result, their faces were disfigured. When they saw some locals passing by, they noticed that mosquitoes were not attacking them. They had to hide for fear of being caught. But Joran went out and asked a man the secret of the matter, after which the man made her wear a necklace that keeps mosquitoes away. After this, everyone could continue their journey peacefully. The days passed and Irina talked about everything one by one. Know their stories. Andres was once a priest. Tomas is a pastry chef who wanted to be an actor. Joran was an accountant who once inadvertently took a photo of a government building, after which he was arrested in the name of espionage, and Smith an engineer who came to Russia to find work. When he was arrested, his son was shot. The next time she stopped to rest, Irina cleaned Smith's leg wounds with the fabric of her skirt. Soon he had reached some railway tracks, and John calculated that it would take about 4 days to reach the border, except that there were many farmers and guards in the area. That's why they have to cross this place before nightfall. While he waited, Waka stared at his talisman. Zoran then mocked him for something, and Waka immediately attacked him. The others had to be rescued. After a few hours, everyone was happy. When he finally crossed the border into Mongolia, but Waka said, "I will stay in Russia." She and John shook hands one last time before parting ways. Now all the others were walking through the desert toward the city. Everyone was very happy, but after some time, the situation became tense. When he saw a board on which it was written that Mongolia is now under the control of the Russian people, now the beggars decided to stay in the desert instead of going to the city. Then he found a Buddhist temple, thinking that the monks would not discriminate, and he immediately went inside. But the place was completely deserted. After several skulls were found buried in the ground, Andrea said the same thing happened in Russia. Priests were shot or arrested, and religion was banned in every way. The church of Andreas was similarly vandalized, and when he saw the church, he was angry and killed a young guard. Everyone started discussing what to do and came to the conclusion that India can be saved. But to get there, one has to cross China. For the next few weeks, he walked in the desert under the scorching sun. One day, when he was suddenly surrounded by some horsemen, he described himself as an American going to Tibet. Fortunately, the horsemen believed them and left without saying anything. Then after a while, a young horseman returned. The one who came was sent by others to give them water. The days passed and they walked, covering their heads and feet with twigs and pieces of cloth to avoid the sun. They used the water very judiciously, but still it ran out. Just then, Smith saw trees in the distance, but John explained to him that you were being misled, and he told everyone to keep going south. When Smith became very nervous, the others decided to calm him down and support him. After walking for some time, he saw a bird flying above him, which proved that Smith was not deluded. Everyone was happy and started running as fast as they could, and finally, they found the well. They drank a lot of water and set up their camp there for the night. In the morning, he filled as many bottles and utensils as he could and headed south. A few days later, when they encountered a sandstorm, everyone panicked and started running towards a nearby pit. They hid themselves until the storm passed. Luckily, everyone survived, but all their water was lost. In the following days, Irene and Tomas became very ill. That's why Smith started talking about going back to the well. But John said how to find out which side is the well. Their journey continued and they started sucking stones to quench their thirst. Suddenly, Irene fell and the others saw that her legs were numb. I don't want to be a burden on them. But the others refused to leave, showing humanity. Everyone continued walking, and soon Aaron fell again. But he refused to rest. Andres then picked her up and walked away. A few hours later, Irene asked Andreas to put her down. He saw everyone one last time, and the poor man died. They all buried him in the sand and began to pray for him. Everyone started running again. With each passing day, his condition worsened. So Ma started drawing pictures of them to keep them all motivated, and he made a very beautiful painting of a smiling Irene. But this was the last painting he made because after that, he also died. He was buried there and the group moved on. A few days later, John saw the hills in the distance and said that we should go there to search for water. But Smith was so tired that he couldn't even move. He told me to leave. John sent Joran and Andres ahead, while he himself stayed near Smith, who had fallen. By the evening, John dragged Smith to his friend's camp. But unfortunately, there was no water. The next morning, Joran woke up to find a snake crawling between his legs. He followed the snake and found a small water hole. The men sipped water and poured some into Smith's mouth as he was unable to move. Then they killed the snake and cooked it for lunch. One of Andreas's teeth fell out while he was eating. That night, Smith told John to leave me, but John said, "We will not leave you as long as you live." In the conversation, John said that I want to see my wife once again in any case. The poor were tortured a lot by the soldiers. His story went straight to Smith's heart. The next day, he got up to continue, and they soon found a river. This gave him enough strength to move towards the hills, and finally, crossing the Great Wall of China, he reached the Himalayan hills. In these snowy hills, they found a small mark that denoted Tibet. In those snowy hills, he found a monk who told him that India was now nearby, and at the same time, he took him with him to the nearby Buddhist monastery. They finally got real food after such a long time. There, the leader of the monks said that if you want to go to India, wait a little. Let go of the cold. You can't survive in a snowstorm. Before going to bed, John said we should leave. We are safe in India. But others agreed. He wanted to stay here. Then he started talking about his future. Andreas wanted to join the fight against Germany and Russia. Joran wanted me to publish Thomas's pictures in the newspaper. I want to tell the world about our story. At the same time, poor John could not go back to Poland. That's why he wanted to go. Smith wanted to return home to the United States. I am going to China, he said. Max had promised that we had a contact. We can send you to America. The next morning, John decided to proceed alone. When Joran and Andreas saw him, they said their last goodbyes to Smith and followed their friend. After some time, they finally reached India. The people of India welcomed him very warmly and also helped him. For the next 50 years, John had no place to go. But then Poland finally became independent. John found his old house and opened the door with the hidden key. As soon as he entered, he was filled with joy because his wife was waiting for him. So how does it feel to tell this beautiful story in the comments? See you in the next video.